Hi, everyone. It's so good to see you all. I am Tristan Miller with Climate Reality here in California in Orange County. And you are at the right place tonight. This is going to be such a fantastic show. We've got Sean here, and he is ready to answer your questions. So think about some things you want to ask Sean as well. And we are your co-hosts, Tristan Miller, Wayne Morgan, and Pete. Everybody wave, hello, hello. And we are not just here for your show tonight. We're here if you have questions throughout the upcoming months, or if you want to meet with us directly about your electrification project. We're all volunteers and we're here to help make this process as smooth as possible and make it work for your home and your energy goals because we all want to have an eco-friendly home. There's so many ways, from EV chargers to switching out your gas stove for an electric stove, to LED lighting, to insulation, so many solar, so many ways, heat pumps, water heaters. And this show and all our past shows, we're going into our third year, are on our YouTube channel. As well as Sean's own YouTube channel as well. So we've got it all covered, and you will be getting a free copy of our pocket guide to all electrification retrofits for single family homes. And it has just been updated this year. So lots of cool gadgets and gizmos for your electrification journey. And why do we electrify? There's so many reasons why we want to go to a heat pump or install a heat pump water heater, install electric stove, all those, we want to have our comfort, cut costs, take control of our energy needs and help our community. It's also for our health. We save tons of money on our electric bill. We also improve our health. I've had friends that when they switched out their gas stove for an induction stove, their children's asthma almost went away. So it's really incredible story there. And also, as I was bringing up, the whole health of our homes is driven by getting rid of gas in our homes and electrifying. And here's a chart that shows the kind of money that you can save when you electrify. And this is on rewiringamerica.org, which is a resource we'll be sharing with you. Also, a heat pump is almost like having 6 solar panels.
Hold on, turn it off here.
Whoops, let me mute
I
somebody.
think Kat needs to mute.
I got you. And this is Wendy, who was on our first show, who we helped get her very own heat pump. Here she is hugging her heat pump as well, and how it, after watching the show, she felt more secure and confident about getting a solar company, changing her electric box, her electric panel, and getting a heat pump water heater. And she, sends huge thanks and has been on our show several times since then. And here are our partners that are also volunteers like us. Thank you so much to the San Diego Building Electrification Coalition and Home Energy Academy. So many great partners across California. And today we're going to be checking out Henry's house in Oakland, California, built in 1908. So we're going to let Sean take it away. Sean, go ahead.
Awesome. Hello, everybody. Thanks for being here. I do want to warmly encourage you to stick questions into the chat so that I'll try to take them as we go along. Tristan, could you bring up my slides, please?
Yes.
Okay. So this will go somewhat quickly just for the sheer fun of it. And any of the questions that you might have, as Tristan said, we have a book online about single family home retrofits. And so you can slow down and get a book and go into it. But let's begin. Next slide, please. To be polite. Hi, I'm Sean Armstrong. I'm from a farm in Wisconsin, organic farm. I grew up like hippie parents. I now live on a farm in Arcata, California. In between here and there, I was briefly a high school science teacher. I really enjoy teaching. This is fun for me. If you have questions along the way, just like in class, you should try to ask them, at least in the chat, and I can bring you in for audio if you like. I worked for 6 years in affordable housing as a project manager, developing the sort of new up and coming strategy, all electric, 100% solar powered, zero net energy did a lot of innovative work and became a consultant since 2011 and worked on about 500 affordable housing developments now that are all electric and solar powered, and written a whole bunch of books, seven books, a bunch. And I'm here to help. Okay, next slide. So I think it's fun to do a little bit of story time to understand where electricity is sort of coming from, how brief of time it is that we've been experiencing electricity. So first, just to like hands off to Michael Faraday, who invented just kind of almost everything. All the early stuff comes out of Michael Faraday. It's amazing. Electric motors, electromagnetic fields, just understanding there's a field around, say, like the two poles of a magnet, understanding fields. And then electrolysis, which is one of the ways like we'll add metals to things. And and also quantum nanoscience. Can you imagine that? Even then, he's making micro dilutions of gold, and you can see from purple to red, that's different amounts of essentially quantum level amounts of gold atoms in the water and bending light in ways that are not seen in any other way of doing it. That Faraday cage, you see the guy standing there getting a gazillion volts blasted at him? David Blaine has kind of a famous magic experiment where he spent a couple days getting zapped. But the thing is that Michael Faraday also demonstrated that if you are inside this electric metal cage, he showed how the forces get equalized and you don't get shocked. That's the take home. Everything's being shocked around you. Next slide. Now just remember, this is in the early 1800s. It's like, 100, 200 years now. About then, that's all we got. The next important thing to know about is heat pumps. Heat pumps are, pardon me, there's a typesetter named James Harrison in Australia. He got ether on his hands, which evaporates. It's a kind of oil solution, and it just evaporates at a very low temperature. So it makes your hand cold, just like water on a windy day. You get like your hand spritzed with water. He thought about this and he invented a machine to both evaporate and then take the evaporated liquid and condense it so you could use it over again, evaporate it again. This process, the vapor compression cycle, vaporizing and then compressing it back into a liquid, vaporizing, then compressing it back into liquid. Using that process allows you to make ice. You can chill water below its freezing point with the evaporation part of the process and make ice. So immediately, next slide, please. The world's breweries use it to make ice to keep beer cold. And they were the number one innovators and investors in this vapor compression cycle technology. And it used to be fossil fueled. They were running huge motors. But today we use electricity. And I'll get into a little more details, but these two go together. Using a heat pump to essentially collect energy from, say, water that you're freezing, or collect it from the air that you're trying to chill, collect the heat out of the air. That process, you can also collect heat from the outside air and bring it in. And that allows you to really collect sunshine energy and bring it into your house, the warm air from outside. So it's a way to get renewable energy into your life. How do you get sunshine into your water heater, sunshine into your space heating? Use the vapor compression cycle to pull heat in. Next slide. Oh, I think your slides are a little different from mine, sadly. Sorry, the formatting got messed up in emailing for folks, but here you go. Now, I love this. San Francisco had the world's first public utility. It's called PG&E. Back in the day, it had a different name, but in 1878, the first place anywhere in the world to start offering electricity for public sale was in San Francisco. Now, the Eiffel Tower was built in 1889, and it was gas lit. So on the left-hand side, those are all gas, flames being blown up. And actually, the Eiffel Tower continued to be lit with gas until the 1980s. 5 years later, at the Midwinter International Exposition, San Francisco, which is like the city of light, they had all these electric lights they've been installing all over. They built a 1/4 size Eiffel Tower and they lit it with electricity. And they had like little computers back in the day, switches turning off and on different lights to make animations. And they had a spotlight so bright you could read a newspaper from 10 miles away. And they used it as a kissing camera to catch people canoodling in the trees. Because it used to be really dark in San Francisco and you could go out and make out. But anyway, that was a little bit of a buzzkill. They took it down just a few years later, and I don't know if it was the couples objecting to how the spotlight was used, but that is now Golden Gate Park, that place where it was built, and some of the buildings are still there. Next slide. Okay, we'll give a little credit to Niagara Falls. So Niagara Falls was one of our first hydropower plants in the United States, and Tesla was hired. You see him sitting there next to this Tesla cage, once again demonstrating different ways to use electricity safely. So you can see the power plants there on the right-hand side that Tesla built. Next slide. And I love this because this is where you get Triscuits. Triscuits are electric baked biscuits. Triscuits, electricity biscuits. And that is, they were made at Niagara Falls, the first like Triscuits. Same thing as shredded wheat. Before it was bought by Post and Kellogg and such, the shredded wheat cereal was made at Niagara Falls. And it was like one of the wonders of Niagara, the home of shredded wheat, where they're using electricity to bake and grind and such. Next slide. So that's like the beginning of industrial electrification. Beer brewing, baking bread and biscuits. So here, transportation electrification. This is a big deal to understand where we were and where we're going again. In 1894, the longest distance vehicle on the planet was electric. It could win a 5-mile sprint. And they had 600 of them, these electric cabs in New York City. They would take an ice rink and trade out batteries. In 1899, Les Jamais Contents, the never satisfied, was the first car to get to 60 miles per hour. And then in 1912, by then, 40% of America's cars were electric. We were almost there. And then spark plugs, I kid you not, because no longer having a hand crank, but instead having a battery. So essentially making cars hybrid was a way to solve a lot of the issues that were hassling gas vehicles that didn't have a way to electrically explode gas. So hybrids we've had ever since has sort of been part electric, part gas. Next slide. In rural America, in 1920, 45% of Americans don't have electricity, and they live in rural America. So it's only like 1 in 10 rural households had electricity. So there was 1 million microgrids in our country, huge battery banks in people's homes, where they were fueled with a gas generator or a wind turbine that store electricity in batteries, and then you'd have lighting at night, which was the big one. Everyone wanted electric lighting. Here you can see 1936, the all-electric Westinghouse demonstration home. It's the first home to go all electric with everything, cooking, like, and they had thousands of architects tour it. It was huge, Mansfield, Ohio. And you can see in the black and white photos here, like the upper left one, there's a telephone, there's a radio, there's an intercom. On the right-hand side, you can see some of the first circuit breakers on the wall above them. They're trying to show this off. Instead of using fuses, you could use circuit breakers to turn on and off things in your home, like heating. And they're like, yay, we're sitting on electric heating here. And the woman on the lower right-hand corner, that's an electric warming kit. And you'd wheel it out, all warm food that had been cooked electrically in the kitchen. Next slide. All right, now we're starting to feel it. This is when heat pumps finally got small enough to get into your house. There were window air conditioners. Sometimes they'd also be reversible and they'd be heat pumps, both heating and cooling, but mostly in the early days they're just doing the air conditioning cycle. It was a huge relief. I mean, heat waves today are, 6 times more common, 10 times more common than they were when I was born, depending upon which study and et cetera, but it's a lot more heat. So I'm glad that we have air conditioning. Next slide. So our nation's electric utilities were the ones selling appliances in the 1950s. Your air conditioner came from Westinghouse, which was also your utility. And these utilities, 1,900 of them across the country, funded the #1 television show, the Live Better Electrically Theater. General Electric, like they funded it with Westinghouse, and they hired Ronald Reagan to host it. And I mean, every single star showed up on this show on Sunday nights. Live Better Electrically. So yeah, Marilyn Monroe, who Ronald Reagan discovered at a World War II factory. He was the person who brought her into Hollywood, but also James Dean and literally everyone. The Groucho brothers, Marcho. I can't say the name right. um, Marco. Someone else help me. Groucho Marx. That's
Groucho
it.
Marx, yeah.
Ah, stumbling my way there. The Marx brothers. They built Ronald Reagan this demonstration all-electric mansion, and he would do infomercials from him, showing off his kids and all of his electric servants, quote unquote, which is like the vacuum cleaner, the coffee warmer, his electric servants. Next slide. This is, back in the 50s, people still built houses with servants' quarters. And this all kind of came to a crashing halt when the Arab component of OPEC, the Arab Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, they were very upset with our support of Israel during the Yom Kippur War, and they boycotted. Go ahead. They boycotted the United States, wouldn't deliver us gas and oil, and electricity prices quadrupled because most of America's power plants, not all, but most were burning oil. And there were huge lines. You can see on the lower right-hand corner, huge lines to get to gas stations. And this led to two pieces of law that are very current. Just today, once again, the Trump administration has said they're going to overturn California's exemption from the 1975 Federal Energy Policy and Conservation Act, as well as the 1969 Clean Air Quality Act. Both of these allow California to have higher standards for fuel efficiency for cars and for buildings than the rest of the country. And this is how California's requirements for electric vehicles, dating all the way back to 1994, how they are now adopted by 13 to 19 states. And that's how we've been, the tail wagging the dog in our country with California's fuel standards. Next slide. Now, a lot happened, obviously, in the following 40 years, but I just want to jump to important policy. This is the policy that set up solar tax credits that the big bill is proposing to cancel. Solar tax credits and a whole bunch of other incentives to try to electrify and solarize our economy. You can see this was bipartisan legislation, both with oil dependence, which is very similar to what is that? Energy dominance, I think is Trump's phrasing. It's the same idea, and this is a compromise bill where it's improving fuel economy and reducing oil dependence / making us stronger with the oil that we have. There's a bunch of stuff that happens there. Next slide. I think 2009 is important. We all remember when computers first entered our lives as home computers. Probably happened in the 1990s for you, maybe the early 2000s if you're a little bit of a late adopter, but you got a home computer. Well, when computers got added to air conditioners and heat pumps, which are reversible air conditioners, that meant that they could work in the wintertime. They could have the fan speed up and the compression cycle speed up with a computer. Whereas before, it was just single speed, like an old-fashioned bicycle that you just stomped on the brakes or you went forward. That's how old-fashioned air conditioners were, is either on or it was off. But with a computer, now you can set whatever temperature you want inside, and it can accelerate or deaccelerate the process of collecting the heat to make it so that it can operate outside down to -30 Fahrenheit and operate during incredible heat waves now up to 135 degrees Fahrenheit. Old air conditioners would die at about 110, 115. So computers are letting us stay in our homes during bad heat waves these days. Next slide. I want to show you how important this is. Okay, the gray line is the electricity demand over the course of a day from pre-retrofit homes in Sacramento, 700 of them. Okay, so you see the peak happening at 1700, 1600 hours, like 4 to 5 in the afternoon. That's the peak for air conditioning. Now, sorry, the orange line, pardon me, the orange line is the pre-retrofit summer peak. You see the label there. The gray line is the post-retrofit after they put in a computer-based heat pump, where the peak in the summertime goes down because it's operating more efficiently. The blue line, this represents in the wintertime how there's now an electric peak. In the morning time, people heat up their homes when they wake up, and you see a morning time winter heating peak. What's important to see is that because the computer is so efficient, not only is the gray line in the summer lower, the blue line in the wintertime is still lower than even the gray line in the summertime, and obviously lower than the orange one. What it means is that these old-fashioned air conditioners, when they come out and they're replaced by a modern computer-driven heat pump, it helps the grid. It makes air conditioning more efficient, and the new winter electricity load is smaller than the air conditioning load, meaning our grid is still sized. All the wires and the components are sized right for electrifying our homes with heat pumps. And this is a great 700 home example of how the greater efficiency of modern heat pumps helps the grid. Some people think, oh no, electrifying your house, it'll harm the grid. No, like 80 to 90% of Americans have air conditioners. Installing a heat pump helps our grid by reducing their energy draw. Next slide. I love this. The Propane Education Research Council freaked out in 2014, hired consultants, and in 2016, this came out, this map showing in yellow every county in which the fuel was going towards electricity for space heating and water heating, and it's everywhere. This is before there's any policies. It was just market driven because it's cheaper to build all electric. It's thousands of dollars, if not tens of thousands of dollars cheaper to build all electric, and it's just simpler, goes a little bit faster, because every appliance is electric, even if it burns gas. It has electricity delivered to it. So you have to wire to every appliance in the house, and then you have to add gas in new construction. You already wired. If you just made it all electric, you only had to wire and then you're done. So you see the natural phenomenon in every state. Next slide. Policy-driven electrification. This is my mother-in-law who died in the Santa Rosa fire in 2017. And I'd already been working on all-electric housing and trying to work on policy levers. And then Nan died from a climate change-induced wildfire. You remember that was dozens of people died in that fire. Thousands of homes were burnt down. Lasted for 3 weeks. Next slide. So you can see me here, or you can't see me, you can see everyone watching me as I make a pitch for the city of Berkeley to be the first one to ban gas at an electrification exposition. And I want to remind you of the power of people. This is during the Trump administration. They were absolutely hostile to what we were trying to do then and now. Same story. And people, because we have democracy in our cities, had the ability to pass laws to ban gas. We got 80 cities to pass them. Then Trump appointed lawyers or judges, overruled us in California, and other judges on the East Coast have overruled them, saying, it is legal for cities to ban gas, particularly for air pollution reasons. That's within their public health and safety charge. And so the city of San Francisco still bans gas in new construction, even though the court ruled on different grounds for different laws that you couldn't. There's ways around it. Next slide. And policies happened. It wasn't just Berkeley, it was national policies. Utilities all over the nation realized that heat pumps were the way they wanted to go. And so if you see in the calendar, 2019, when we started, gas furnaces were selling more than heat pumps. In 2020 and 2021, it was neck and neck. In 2022, it opened up. 2023 and 2024 has only gotten bigger and bigger. This same illustration is true globally. Everywhere in the world, we've woken up to the fact that electrification is how we get rid of fossil fuels and save our wildlands and save our oceans and save so many different things that are impacted by climate change and our own health and safety. Next slide. And this is also happening in California for vehicles. I started off showing how electrification and vehicles worked together. And then we had a long period of time in which we had hybrid homes. They were both electric and gas. We had hybrid cars, they had batteries and they had gas. And now we're moving fully back into electrification. You can see vehicle here sales. This is as of April 30th, 2025. Don't let anyone tell you that EV sales aren't through the roof. They continue to be through the roof. They're the only growth market globally. Electric cars are growing in their sales. Gas cars are flat or declining in every country in the world. And then on the right-hand side, you can see how the Bay Area has led the nation, with some parts of the Bay Area having 60% of new vehicles being sold were completely electric. 60%! You can see in the darkest green parts, like around San Jose and Fremont, because there's a Tesla factory in Fremont, Vallejo. So that's the good news. Next slide. Bay Area on the left-hand side, the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, and then CARB for the whole state. We have a successful policy adoption in the Bay Area for phasing out gas-burning water heaters and space heaters by 2029. And then statewide, we're phasing out gas burning by 2035. 90% less gas burning is what our governor has instructed CARB to accomplish based upon his climate emergency declaration in 2022. After we'd had 6 years of wildfires destroying our cities. I mean, that doesn't even include what just happened in Los Angeles this spring, pardon me. Next slide. Okay, we are almost at Henry's house. I want to show you kind of an extreme example. We won a big prize for this, like $250,000 from the Department of Energy back when we had the old Department of Energy, because we converted 2 houses to be all electric on 100 amps of service. Henry's house has a 100 amp service, and I'm showing you that. Imagine this was Henry's house, which is like the next slide. Plus, Henry also wants to electrify his garage and turn it into an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit, like a little house. Well, this is how we did it. From left to right, we have in the upper left-hand corner, that's a wall-mounted heat pump that just plugs into any outlet in the wall. And then we have a black box there that's called a neocharge circuit splitter. And that balances the HVAC for the house, the heating system, like the heat pump furnace. It balances that with the electric stove on the far right. So you can run the stove and the heat pump at the same time. But if you were running the heat pump full blast and managing to turn every single burner on full blast on your stove, then your heat pump would turn off for about 10 or 15 minutes. Okay, so that was a way that we avoided having to put in more electrical lines and more service to the house. In the middle, you see 2 different water heaters. The one on the left doesn't have any backup electricity. It's just a heat pump. And the one on the right is a hybrid, but both of them can plug into any outlet in the house and just use the plug circuit. So we didn't have to run dedicated circuits to them or have increased power demand. They use 1/5 as much power as what a heat pump water heater normally would use, because normally they have a very large electric resistance backup. And in this case, they have very tiny ones or not at all. And then Henry, he has a heat pump dryer, and you can see the 2-in-1 washer dryer there. That is a heat pump washer dryer. One box washes the laundry and then uses a super efficient heater for drying the laundry. And then just above that, though, in the second house, the little garage house, we have countertop cooking. So not a full stove, but instead a 2-burner countertop induction range and a countertop oven, and also like a Vornado air fryer and a whole bunch of other cool little countertop appliances. So the whole kitchen is set up to cook just with the outlets, normal outlets, not getting a big 50 amp circuit of 240-volt electricity delivered for a big stove. Instead, it's just like the outlets you use for your blenders. Now, that is the end of my presentation. And now we get to talk about Henry's house. Are there any questions, though, before we jump into that? I'm just looking in the chat. I want to make sure.
And Tom has joined us as well, so Tom can answer.
Hey!
So we hope you'll introduce yourself in the chat and do some questions.
Yeah, so John Knox, yes, Triscuits, electrically baked biscuits. It's like a little fun party thing to bust out. Now, Jeffrey, you said, I have some questions about using solar panels that have been used for a new project. So, used solar panels is your question.
Yeah,
Maybe you could write it.
can I
Go
add
ahead.
to that? So I found a place that has hundreds of solar panels that they're removing that still have some useful life potentially in them. And I'm wondering if
Yeah.
there's any precedents for using panels like that in new projects, like refitting them. Like I proposed to this organization that they donate them to this nonprofit. They're thinking about it as a possibility, but I still haven't figured out whether it would make sense to take a donation of these panels.
Yes, I think it would be. The thing that needs to be updated is the inverters. Inverters are always very specific. When you hook up to PG&E or any other utility, they have like a list of current inverters that you're allowed to use. So you can't use the old inverters, but the
Mhm.
panels, those will last 40 years. They'll last 60 years. Um, Solar panels built in 1981, Arco solar panels today are still being used. So 45 years later, and they've lost somewhere between 15 to 20% of their total electricity in that 45 years.
Wow.
So your solar panels, clean them off, and they're
Yeah.
probably lost 5%,
Mhm.
maybe 10%. A different part of it is that they're going to take up more space
Mhm.
because the efficiency of panels, the same amount of space, but the amount of electricity that they make in that space, the efficiency of panels in the last 15 years or so has gone from about 15% for good panels to about 22% for good panels.
Uh-huh.
So you might expect these used panels to take up about a third more space than brand new panels would. So they take up a little bit more space. They're a little bit less efficient, only a little bit, of their lost energy, and and then you just get new inverters on them. That's the deal.
So,
But yeah,
so it sounds like I mean, literally, like they have probably over 1,000 of these panels. So, it seems like they're actually pretty high value potentially. Any idea of what the costs of the inverters and stuff to provide new inverters for these panels might look like at all?
um, well, the inverters will be kind of standard inverters out there.
Hmm.
Solar Edge, um, Sun. Someone else has to throw in some inverters. Tom, you're on this, right? Could you put some inverters brands that are popular right now into the chat? Tom helps people install solar on their roofs, and I'm not familiar enough with that.
Okay, great.
Um,
That's fantastic.
yeah. And,
Thank-
Greg, you had this question about cold climate heat pumps. So Gradient has a 120 volt window heat pump for sale right now. It's like 4 grand, but it does go over a sash type window, or you can put it into a slider window and then put something in where the slider window was. And they sell online like little custom made replacement windows, small windows that you can stick into a slider and expand it up and down so it fills the space with a window. Other people put a board there, or God forbid, cardboard or things like that. How wide is your window?
It's only about 12 inches wide. Um, it's a
12
small
inches.
window. Yeah.
Well, you're going to need to use, for 12 inches, a floor mounted heat pump like what Medea makes. Medea, or I think Anderson Cooper is another one, but a couple of them, they have a little bit of cold climate de-icing treatment where it's like the Medea has an inverter and it does run down to the freezing range and producing heat. And you could get the hose from the Midea portable floor mounted heat pump into that 12-inch window.
I mean,
Um,
to follow up, I could put, there is drywall space I could knock out. And there's plenty of like slim, there's lots of PTACs and similar that are just do AC, or even some that are non-cold climate, but I can't find anything that's 120 volts that could go through a wall that works in a cold climate. That's been a struggle.
well, the Gree, you should look at Gree. I'm not sure if it's 240 volt though, but Gree and Midea both have through wall square heat pumps, like when you might put in a window. But if you cut a hole in the wall for it, you could have a sleeve like they do for through wall heat pumps. And Gree, I saw them at AHR. Gree and Midea both were, and ACIQ. Those are three brands I saw at AHR in Florida this year with through wall cold climate heat pumps. We should probably do some research to find out if they're 120 volt or not, or if they're 240 volt, whether or not you're going to have to run a new electrical line there. But that's possible.
Yeah,
One person, Jay, you wanted to know what's the difference between 120 volt and 240 volt? Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't 240 volt essentially delivered a little bit more efficiently? So there might be a little difference in efficiency between the two?
well, 240, this is Wayne, 240
Yeah.
can deliver more power for the same size wire. Basically you can get twice the power at the same wire size. So it's much more efficient to send, larger appliances or feed them with 240 volts. Yeah, otherwise you'd be using really fat wires and you'd be losing, energy if you didn't. So,
Well, there's 120 volt mini split heat pumps that are just 1 ton heat pumps, essentially for one room.
okay.
There's mini split types, and then there's also window ones and floor ones. There's a bunch of different 1 ton or less. 1 ton is 12,000 BTUs. A BTU is a single wooden matchstick burnt from tip to tip. So a 12,000 BTU heat pump in an hour can produce about 12,000 matches burnt tip to tip of heat into your room, or take it out of your room as an air conditioner.
Yeah. So
So
a 120 volt outlet can deliver 1800 watts, 15 amps at 120 volts. So that limits you to basically 1.5 ton.
1 ton. Yeah. One and a half
So
top. 1 ton
yeah,
mostly, yeah.
I would go with 1 ton. Yeah. So
So,
you're limited,
Yeah, so it's really 120 volt. The reason you do it is because you're trying not to run a new wire, and you'll have a limited capacity for the heat pump, like 1.5 tons or less. But you can plug it into the existing circuit without having to run a new wire, a new circuit to that place, which is like drilling through your walls and things like that. So that's the reason you do it, is to just avoid the hassle of rewiring. Yeah, 120
so
volt is just,
Sean, yeah, just maybe a little bit more is that you find the same system, the same 1 ton system, both in 240 and 120. And, I ended up doing, like you said, the easy track. It was just easier to run a 120. It
yeah,
works fine because it's just for one room, as you said.
yeah.
But it was funny that they sell it in both 240 and 120. So that was the weird thing for the same size.
For the same thing, yeah. It's in response to people's desire to retrofit existing homes and use 120 volt outlets to perform that
well,
versus new construction.
they might sell it in Europe too, a model like that.
Well,
you
but
know.
Europe is only 240 volt. They don't have 120 there.
Right.
They're 220,
Yeah.
240.
But yeah, I
Well,
mean,
okay.
you can make them for both. Yeah.
So to be polite to Henry, I'm going to pause on some of the questions there, put them into the chat, and let's bring Henry's slides up if you could.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I will go through them pretty quickly too. To leave
Oh,
plenty of-
Tristan, could you do it so that it's my slides? Because I have added to your slides, Henry, with slides in between. So we'll just, that way you can show your slide and then I'll explain some thoughts in relation to it.
Fabulous.
Yes. Let me see that I have the right one, because when I was just about to share it, it wasn't advancing. So,
Okay, that was the last slide.
so is there
Okay.
another PowerPoint then?
Well, doesn't it have there's no slide after that one?
Yeah. Oh, wait, here we go.
Oh,
There we go.
okay. Oh, good. Good. Okay. Phew. All right,
Woo!
Henry, take it away.
Absolutely. I'll be very brief.
No,
So
we'll do it together. Yeah. Have
a
fun.
couple friends and I purchased the house together. We live in the front house. It's a big rambling 1908 house. They live in the back house. It's a 2006 house, so pretty widespread. The 1908 house is falling apart. I don't think there's one piece of insulation in the entire thing except for the asbestos, which we'll get to later. And oh, all single pane windows everywhere. I have ordered double paned windows for half the house, but I'm still figuring out how to do the other half of the house. We did an innovative limited equity approach to ownership, but that's a separate project.
Cool.
Any way you can make it work in the city, you go.
Exactly.
Okay, then we'll do the next slide here, noting that these are 100 amp services, right?
They are, though I don't actually know if they're limited but by the wire size, like the meters themselves might be higher, but there are 100 amp breakers in each sub panel. And then in the actual sub panel, which is about 15 feet away from the main service, we actually had to replace all the wiring in the house because it was knob and tube. And we have a large basement, so you can actually, it's relatively easy to work on. But we have, 5, 6 panel slots left, which is hopefully helpful.
Yeah, that makes it, if you didn't, you could put a different panel there and just have more slots, or you could put in micro circuits. So one slot has, instead of one circuit, you could have 2 circuits. There's ways to avoid having to replace that metal box, but it's not a nightmare if you did. Okay, cool. Let's do the next slide. All right, so this is what I wanted to show you is a few options. So one way where you can just plug in anything you want, no matter how powerful it is to use a smart panel. So on the left-hand side, there's SPAN. SPAN makes 50 and above amp panels. So if you had a 50 amp panel, you could put in a 50 amp SPAN panel, and you could plug in about 150 amps of stuff. And if you had a 100 amp SPAN panel, and they make one SPAN panel, you just set it to, is it 100 amp, is it 60 amps? So you get a SPAN panel, set it in your case to 100 amps, and you could install roughly 300 to 400 amps of stuff into it. In the middle, you have Lumen, different brand, different cost, same idea. You have down to 30 amps in this case. You can use it as a sub panel. 30 amps is what you'd power it with, but you can plug in 150 amps of stuff into it. The deal is that it's extremely rare for everything to be running at the same time at full power. And usually, while you might have 100 amps of service to your house, the 15-minute peak on your house is probably, according to the averages that we've seen, it's probably like 34 amps in the worst case moment of the entire year, and usually more like 15 or less. So you can plug a bunch of things into one smart panel and it will almost never need to turn something off. But if it does, you choose. It turns off your car charger. It turns off your water heater for a few minutes. It turns off, like we did with the tiny house example I showed you, we turned off the furnace, the heat pump furnace, if the stove was running too much, which has never happened. On the right-hand side, this is a little tricky. This is also a smart panel designed to do the things we just talked about, but this one also charges your car and then discharges from your car. If you want your house to go off-grid using the car battery as the battery, DC DC Bell makes, I think they call it the Aura. It's all about like music names with them. And so it can do this job. So you have 3 options for 100 amp smart panel, and the one on the right also facilitates going off-grid with your car.
Will the one on the right also accept solar?
Yes. It is a DC inverter, so you'd have your solar array on the roof have DC optimizers, not AC microinverters. You'd run DC electricity down to this box, and then it would do the inverter work there.
Very cool.
Yeah,
And it can control home batteries too. It's like home battery, EV as the house battery. Yeah.
that is the least expensive way of adding storage to your home. If you buy, an EV, you get that. Make sure your car is capable of doing that. But yeah, that's a great way to have backup, especially for us in California where we have fires and safety shutoffs, and so
Yeah.
Really
Yeah,
it's really going to be the future.
indeed. Nissan right now, in their warranty is explicit that you can do this as many times a day as you want. They have like, our car's already controlled for it. All you're doing is driving the equivalent of like 5 to 10 miles per hour down the road when you're discharging your car into your house. So the cars are designed for it. It's no big deal. Next slide. These are just smaller versions of that smart panel. These are all ones that balance 2 circuits instead of all of them. So I showed you the one on the left-hand side, the NeoCharge, which we balance the stove and the heat pump furnace in the small house, or it was in the larger of the 2 homes. And these are just other examples. Dryer Buddy, Simple Switch, Split Volt, Thermalec DCC, EV Duty, all the same thing, where it's either one circuit or the other is using the electricity, or both at the same time. If it's the NeoCharge on the left-hand side, that's a smart one, or the Thermalec, which is also a smart one. And the other ones, it's just one or the other. Like Simple Switch is a great example. You can either run the stove in that case or the HVAC system. But NeoCharge lets you do both unless you are using more electricity than the circuit can support, and then it turns off one of them for you. Okay, next slide is back to you, Henry. But do you have any questions about what these smart panel options I just showed you as one way of approaching this?
No, very helpful.
You
This
betcha.
slide is really just to show that we've kind of made some of the electrification upgrades already. I installed a heat pump hot water heater.
Nice.
Relatively straightforward. It works great. I had to replace the circuit board because apparently all of them from Rheem are going bad. And then we put in a heat pump, a dryer as well. No vents. We didn't have to cut a 4-inch hole in the wall, and it drains into the same drain that the washing machine does.
That is
That's
so
beautiful. Well, let's do next slide. We'll talk about that just for a moment. So for everyone else's benefit, if you wanted to get a 120 volt, plug it into any outlet, washer, dryer, or just a dryer, these are example options. LG is a really great leading brand. And so the one on the left, that's a condensing washer dryer. It's slower than a heat pump, and it also uses more electricity. Condensing functionally is an electric resistance dryer. It just runs slowly. Then in the middle, that is a heat pump dryer, just like what Henry just showed you. It's a big one. I wanted you to see. It's a 7.8 cubic foot ultra capacity ventless, for $1,600 in case you're like washing dog beds and large mattresses or whatever. That's like a big one. I just wanted you to see. And on the right hand side, I'm still a big fan of LG, arguably one of our best brands in the country. And this is the heat pump version of the washer dryer combined machine. Henry has a dedicated heat pump dryer. Totally cool and good. This is just the combined version of it. Next slide. And then I want to show you water heaters. So Rheem is the one in the middle that Henry installed. And Rheem has gotten a bit of a black eye recently. They really struggled during the recession with a lack of access to fans and computer parts and et cetera. And tons of their, I think, Generation 4 have come up with complaints because if you remember, there was lack of access globally to fans, which is a critical component of all heat pumps, as well as other circuit boards. Remember, like for a while, Tesla was making their own circuits and like, yay, we have our own in-house circuits, and that's why we're able to produce our cars and other people can't. Anyway, Rheem got hit hard by the global supply chain contraction during COVID, and a lot of their products that were produced from that era have challenges, unfortunately. If you were to use A.O. Smith next to them, you would have a quieter system, and it costs a little bit more, but Rheem is literally the least expensive of the heat pump water heaters, and that, it comes with quality. There's Bradford White, Stiebel Eltron over on the East Coast, and then the Eco 2 or Sanco 2 on the left-hand side. Those are if you have like a gigantic bathtub, one of those huge eggshell bathtubs where just a standard tank of hot water isn't going to fill it, and you need to have something that is super big. Those are ones that were designed in Japan for their 100 to 150 gallon sitting tubs. So that's like a Japanese fancy heat pump water heater just for really big bathtubs. You already have that handled, Henry. I just wanted to let other people see some options. Go ahead, next slide.
This is where it starts to get really fun. So that is a gravity furnace in the basement, which means there are no moving parts. The furnace just heats the heat up and it rises through the ducts. You can see the lovely asbestos. We had an HVAC technician look at it just to see if it was safe, and he said, "Yeah, I've seen about 6 of these in my career, and I've taken 5 of them out." And so they're typically not long for this world. They're very inefficient, I think in the 30 to 40% range. Um, but they like the house has these beautiful grills, and I would love to preserve them. We'll strip the paint off the brass. Are there good solutions for retrofitting these kind of wall registers?
Yeah. Let's go to the next slide for a moment. So you could put a heat pump outside that looks like this, and then you would have ducts connected to it. So the one that says slim duct, you might have one of those attached to 1 to 2 of your ducts. So that's a smaller one for smaller zones. You would do that because you're like, we like our bedrooms at 65, where we'd like to have the living room at 70 degrees because we like it to be cool where we sleep and warm where we hang out. And you can't do that with what you have. You know, what you have, the whole house gets more or less the temperature that you want it. So when you go to dedicated fan coils like this, then you have a remote controlled thermostat and you control zones, and you can split up the house as you wish. So that's for using your existing registers. You'd have small ducts attached with a heat pump outside that looks like that. So it's one option.
Is
Next slide.
is there
Go
any
ahead.
concern about air return on those? Because there's not really good well, there might be good return pathways. I don't know.
No, you don't have to really worry much about the returns on those. They'll each have their own dedicated air supply, what you call a return, air going into it, and then the air goes out. So let's say that you have that nice big basement, you said. This would sort of sit right next to that register, and its air intake would be more or less like the back of that box. And you no longer be using your ductwork that has a bad air intake. You'd be using this device and having like its air intake be right there.
Great.
Okay, so then you're on that next slide though.
Oops.
Oh no, the one previous to that, please. So your house, your old super leaky house, how many square feet did you say it was?
I think about 1,600.
1,600 square feet. So you want a 3-ton heat pump, 36,000 BTUs, and that heat pump might be too big for your house after you insulate it. And so it's nice though, because the ones they build today with computers in them, it's not too big. It just turns itself down. And that'd be your goal, is to just get a computer-driven heat pump, not a single speed or a dual speed, and so you get a 36,000 BTU heat pump, and it can turn down to say 10,000, 12,000 BTUs, which is great, before it has to quote unquote short cycle, meaning turn on and off. So I think this is probably the right solution for you. The compressor, you see the box that's kind of shorter, that's the heat pump box. I showed you the previous slide how it looked more like an upright tablet or something. That's just because that's how they do it in Eurasia. And this is how we do it in America. They make their fan oriented up and down. We make our fan oriented side to side, like vertical. It's just a fan and a box. And inside of it is a whole bunch of little tiny coils where the refrigerant is doing heat exchange for vaporizing and compressing. So you would, I was trying to show you, like, a lot of people have a gas furnace that looks like what's on the left-hand side. They have an air conditioner and a gas furnace, which is what that gray box is. And then on the right-hand side, you get the exact same box and you put it in the same place, but it's a heat pump box now. And you can see the options on below. And I'd say your thing is so old that it's not going to be identical to one of these. But you'd put the heat pump box outside, the square one that's shorter. that sits somewhere outside near where your furnace is. You run the refrigerant line in. It's a tube of copper with the liquid/gas inside of it. And then there's that box that sits there. It sits down in your basement and does the same thing. You replace your asbestos ducts, or I guess you could leave the asbestos ducts just because they're so dangerous to handle, and connect this fan coil box to your ductwork or future ductwork. The whole house then would be one zone. It's either, it's the one temperature that you set it to, and distant rooms don't get heated quite as much as rooms that are closer. You know how all that works. So this is less control, but it's just pretty straightforward. I personally would lean you in the direction of the first option I showed you. That's just me as a preference, because I like having multiple zones in a house. But that's just a little bit more control. Yeah, the efficiencies of the heat pumps in Eurasia are usually better than the ones in America, but not exclusively. Carrier is a terrific brand for efficiency in the United States. It's a old name because Carrier, he invented heat pumps for heating your house. He was in 1930s. I didn't show you that slide, but this guy named Carrier, Willis Carrier, invented the first heat pump for people's homes in the 30s. And it's still a good company. Okay, let's go to the next slide, your stove.
Excellent. Yeah, I guess the only gas left in the house is the furnace and the stove, and we kind of took everything out of the kitchen, so it's a free-floating stove. I think we have a lot of flexibility there, and you can kind of see we put
You
some
sure do.
temporary tables beside it.
That's lovely. I think it'll be really easy. So if you go to the next slide, here are two options. I'm going to show you more, but the one on the left-hand side is where you just put shelving where your gas stove is, like the shelving you have now, and you use countertop induction and a countertop oven. That's how I cook all my meals for my 3 kids right now, and have been since Nan died in 2017. I dragged the gas stove out and immediately started cooking with the circuits I had. On the right-hand side, this is a $6,000 stove, but it has a battery in it so that you can plug it into any outlet but still have full blast power as if you had a 240 volt 50 amp circuit. It's the battery doing all the work. It's a San Francisco company. I'm very proud of the fact that my company installed the first 36 of them that were ever built into local tribal housing, reservation housing. 2 of the households didn't even have stoves in their homes. They were cooking on camp stoves, and so I was really proud to be able to bring in good stoves for people. So the left-hand side is cheap and fast. The right-hand side is expensive and fast. Let's go to the next slide.
Yep. And they've been on a previous show. So if you want that episode, Henry will send it to you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Our stove is actually a downcycled stove from someone who did get one of those.
Well, if you have that basement opened up and you want to run a 240 volt line to where your stove is, your options on top, these are electric resistance, radiant. So they've got a glass top. You put the pan down and the glass gets hot. They're kind of dangerous to touch if you have kids. You can start a fire with these. They can melt an aluminum pan. Gas and electric resistance, both are dangerous for fires. On the bottom, electric induction stoves, which can't get hotter than 475 Fahrenheit, which is super hot. That burns your food to a blackened crisp, but it won't melt your pan. It won't light your Teflon pan on fire. 475 is low enough that it doesn't damage, pots and pans. So these are options, Kenmore, Frigidaire. I really like Samsung. LG isn't there, but I'd encourage, LG. And these are all below $2,000. If you have more than $2,000, you start entering into the world of, you see Electrolux there and Bosch and AGA. And you can spend $22,000 on an 8-burner, 4-oven, crazy induction stove that looks like it's built in 1910. But this is just normal people stuff, like your normal person stove. And you'll find that it will boil water 3 times as fast. Like you can watch a pot boil on induction. It's a lot of fun that way. It's just so fast. And that is my last slide, and we're right at 6:30. So do you have any questions, Henry?
I appreciate all the input, especially on the HVAC. That's going to be the challenging one, I think.
Well, stay in touch, send up bids when you get bids for them, and I'll review them and point out, like, well, they're proposing a 4-ton system. I mentioned that you don't need more than 3 tons. And every ton is like $7,000 of installed cost. So when the HVAC contractor comes with the most expensive part of electrification, 3 times, 4 times as expensive as any other thing you're going to do is the HVAC system, and they oversize your system oopsie whoopsie such that they get thousands of dollars more profit for the exact same amount of work that they did. That's how you lose your shirt. So just insist that you don't want more than 3 tons. You don't care what they say.
Appreciate like that's I think the type of conversations I'll be having.
Cool. Well, I have a friend who's trying to meet me for dinner here in town. Is there any other questions from folks before I jump and go say?
Real quick, I don't know if there's anything else. We'll send some more ideas for inverters. We shared some. People wanted some cost range for the inverters.
Oh, inverters are like 2 to 3 grand in my experience.
Mm-hmm. And then Kat says we're using an induction cooktop on the counter with 120 volts. And if we use a
Nice.
2-burner, only one would work full force. So cooking 2 pots at the same time isn't realistic, but did not have to switch out to a 240 volt circuit. So I wonder which
Well,
brand she's using.
yeah, I mean, 1800 watts, if you split 2 of them and 900 watts and 900 watts, in my experience, my food is frying to the point of burning at about 600 watts. I can't cook with much more than 600 watts for most of my stuff. 900 watts is certainly more than enough. When I'm boiling, I like to have all 1800 watts because it just goes faster. So when I'm boiling with 2 burners, it's not as fast. And it is literally just as fast as a gas stove. 900 watts on induction is as fast as the gas burner on full blast. It's probably even a little bit faster, but it's no slower than a gas burner at full blast. So that's why I feel like, okay, I have 2 gas burner equivalents when I'm running them at the same time. And it's still more controllable and easier to clean and safer. By the way, I saw Dennis.
Yeah,
He said,
Dennis.
what are the names and specifications for the DC bidirectional charger shown connected to the Nissan Leaf? It's Decibel, DC Bell. So that's the name of the company, DCBEL. And then it's their ARA, ARA. Just put that into the chat. That is the one I was showing you there. That's kind of sweet. And
And John had
folks
one.
wanted,
Mhm.
yeah, let's see here. You said GE makes the profile, a washer dryer combo heat pump dryer, plugs into a standard outlet. Excellent. Yep. Sells for $2,200, the same as the LG combo. And you've had that GE for over a year and you love it. Super quiet and efficient. Glad to hear that because we actually bought the GE profile for that demonstration house that we won the prize for. And I felt a little guilty because I was like, maybe I should have gotten LG. I'm like a big proponent of them being a good brand, but I got the GE. And the person who has it loves it, and I guess you love it too. So now I know.
If those are narrow enough, we might want to consider we've got, one in here.
Oh, your audio is funky. Someone is. Yeah, they got to figure that out.
Try that or put it in the chat. Kat, did you have
Well, Cat Whittle, that question for an induction range, is the oven regular electric or induction? It's regular electric. Induction is not used in ovens. Instead, they'll use an electric resistance element and probably fans. And sometimes they'll put the electric resistance elements in different places to do better job for baking.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I apologize. You kind of have to jump because I have Steve Schmidt waiting for me. He's a wonderful friend and guest of the show.
That's right. I remember. And it's
All
good to
right. So
see
take
Mark
care, y'all.
in here again, who was on our show before. Good to see Mark and so many of you guys tonight. We will be sending out an email, and please reach out to us anytime when you receive the email from Wayne and Climate Reality, where we'll send you all kinds of resources, but we're also here, as I said before,
Right.
And we'd love to showcase any electrification project you're doing. Hi, Mark. Good to see you.
Take care, y'all. Thank you,
Bye,
Tristan.
Sean.
Okay. Bye, Sean.
Any other further questions that we can help you with?
Thank you all for the advice.
Hey, absolutely. And we can jump on another meeting later too, as like Sean said, as you get quotes and things like that and look at it so that you can, finish your project with confidence.
I appreciate it.
And we appreciate it too. And please share with your network and friends who are looking to electrify. We are here even on the show or offline. Like if you'd prefer to just meet with us directly, we can also do that.
Appreciate it. I think the back house needs to go through the same electrification process, so
Let's
they'll be in line next.
do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Thank you
Thank-
guys so much for the amazing questions. They really are brilliant. We learned so much from you guys. Have a great night. And we'll see you on the next show. We'll be emailing you about it. Take care. Happy summer.
Bye, all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.